Hey, we made it to another Friday. Let's do some form checks. Hey guys, welcome back to another Form Check Friday. I'm Paul. As always, Clint is asleep. He looks adorable right now. And zero help once again. Thank you, buddy. Anyway, glad you guys joined for another episode of Form Check Friday. Thank you to everybody who posted. We've got a good group today, so we are going to dive right in. No updates from me. Last week we did a recap of our fat loss challenge, but I want to spend as much time as possible with you guys. So as you guys know, those of you who've been around, I have not seen any of these. And yeah, for the newcomers, I've not seen any of these, and we're going to do this all in real time. And we are going to start with my man Luke, who was part of our fat loss challenge. And also, fun fact about Luke, he has like 50 wiener dogs. So hopefully they'll be in this video. If not, we're going to start requiring that. If I'm going to do this, I want wiener dogs. Okay. Luke, here we go. Here's my squat. I've been working on holding the back angle and sitting back at the bottom. I think I'm still not holding the back angle after the hip bounce later in the set. Let me know if you see anything else. All right, we got 290 for 5 and hopefully some wiener dogs. All right, let's see what Luke has to do or has for us. So we'll watch a couple of these and, just get a feel for it. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. Let's see here. Knees are lagging a little bit, getting to their final position forward. If you watch them, if we watch your knee, and that's going to affect the entire rep. Okay. So there's little things that affect the rep. And if you mess the little things up, it's like you don't even have a shot at everything's going to go to hell after that. So let me see if I can slow this down. And let's see if we can zoom in here, if my mouse will let me do this. And we're going to zoom in. How far can I go? Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, let's just pay attention to this knee here. Okay, we'll watch that guy. And just watch where I'm looking for how long it takes to get to the bottom, to get to the final position. In other words, how long it takes to stop moving forward. It should be the halfway point, but it looks like it's just tracking all the way down here. Still going, kind of gets there right at the bottom. Let's watch another one. This is in slow motion, by the way, so. All right, still going, finally gets there. And yeah, all right, so here's the deal. Everything that we need to talk about is going to stem from that issue. Because what's missing here is the final part where you sit back. The knee travels forward to the halfway point, halfway down in the squat, The knee travels to its final destination where it will be at the bottom. It needs to get there by the halfway point, okay, of your descent. So let's speed this back up again so that you can spend the second half of the descent sitting back, right? And stretching the hips back, stretching out the adductors, generating that stretch reflex. That one was actually not that bad. I mean, none of these are that bad. But that one, you're still going forward. So if the knee's pulling you forward at the bottom when you're supposed to be thinking about sitting back and getting your weight a little bit back on your heels, you're not going to get a good stretch reflex. You're still driving your hips up, but you're not getting like a bounce. So yeah, overall, this is like the last thing we need to do here. I gotta watch this one more time. Because I think that's really all that. I thought the bar might be a little high on your back, but I don't. It looks fine. Yeah. And now they start this one, I think. If you notice, you're just kind of getting to the bottom and then just grinding up. There's not a lot of spring in the transition between the descent and the ascent. And I mean, again, you got 290 on your back. It's not going to be like super bouncy, but it's all kind of the same speed. Whereas we should see a little bit of acceleration with that stretch reflex. So honestly, man, I think that you just need to get that knee set by the halfway point. You need to get it to where it wants to be. And I'll just explain this for people who may be joining for the first time. If we mark the bottom of the rep, and that's a good bottom, like that's a great bottom position, okay? And I don't really have a reference point here, but let's try. So if we mark that's where your knee goes. So it's like right where this welding kind of ends right there. All right. So that's where it wants to be, and it needs to get there by the halfway point. So if we go back and I pause it at around the halfway point, right? It should be where this like weld kind of ends. That's not it. I screwed that up. It's close, man. It's real close, but it's not quite there. Oh, you know what would be a better idea? Why don't I mark the letters? All right, let's see how we do here. Oh, that's why, because the plate's in the way. Anyway, yeah, I don't have a good like reference point here, but that's what we're missing. Okay. We're missing you setting your knees all the way forward earlier. They're getting there. They're just getting there at the bottom. And because they finished they finish their forward motion when you're supposed to be sitting back, the knees are going to pull you forward and you're not going to finish the stretch back. So broken record here, of course, but this is a perfect time or perfect example of when you should practice pause squats. Okay, because or bounced pause squats. Okay, because you need to feel that fully stretched, not only the balanced bottom position, but the fully stretched adductors and the motion and what it feels like to get that sort of dynamic rebound. Okay, so again, you know this, Luke, but for people who are visiting for the first time, hornstrength.com/videos, scroll down to legs, and we have the bounced pause squat. And essentially, this is all of the instructions for how to do this are in the description of the YouTube video, but you're just going to take it down to the bottom, pause for a few seconds, and before you come up, you're going to bounce. Boom, 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 and then come back up. So you bring it down to the bottom, you make sure you're balanced and tight, and then you work on that, the sensation, feeling the rhythm of and the stretch of that stretch reflex. Okay. So highly recommend that you do some of those to feel your weight back a little more, the knees out, the full stretch, and the springiness that's supposed to be there. The boing, as Rip would say. When you go to the bottom and start driving up, you should hear in your head, you should be thinking boing, which sounds stupid, but it actually works pretty well. So that's really it with your squat. I think you just got to get the knees out forward, further forward faster by the halfway point and focus that second half of the descent on stretching back and then really leaning into that dynamic stretch reflex. And I think everything else will come, is going to fix itself, because anything that's happening with your back angle, the tendency to lift your chest too soon, that's all going to stem from not being balanced and getting the descent order correct. Okay, so if you fix that, then everything should fall into place. So let me just make sure I answered all of your questions here before we move on. Not holding the back. Yeah, you're holding the back angle after the bounce. will happen if you get the descent correct and you finish the movement properly. And in other words, you end up in the right position to drive up balance. Then you'll be able to hold that. If your weight is shifting forwards or backwards or not in the right place, or the bar's kind of moving, the bar path isn't perfectly straight and efficient, you're going to do all kinds of things to save it. And that's essentially what you're doing if you're lifting your chest too soon, is you're trying to save the bar, get it back in the groove, prevent it from dumping over your head or taking a step forward or something like that. So if you're balanced tight at the bottom, then you've got a good shot at nailing the ascent and hanging onto that back angle for longer. Okay? Work on that. And you might want, you're a strong dude, you might want to try some of those bounce pause squats with moderately heavy weight, So if you're doing 290, maybe see if you can do a couple of them. You don't have to do like 3 or 4 at 225. And just, the more weight you get on those, it sort of forces you to do it correctly. So you might try and jack up the weight, and hopefully you'll get a better sense of it. All right, man, give those a shot and then post another one and we'll take a look. But you're very close. Just got to sit back a little bit more at the bottom and get the knees set earlier. All right. Let's move on to the next guy. RK Johns 1. Hey, Paul, last week I posted my 270 by 4 squat video where the weight was clearly too heavy for me. You requested that I video some ascending sets to review this week in an effort to determine at what weight I should be training at. Here they are, 185 and okay. I loaded 245 and hit record, did 2 reps and thought I reverted back to bad habits. After reviewing the video, I don't think it was too awful. That always happens. So I went ahead and did a set of 5, but forgot to hit record. I was running out of time. Wanted to complete the day's light deadlifts and chin. So here is a video of 245, but that was a full explanation of that. Okay, I will take a look at these. Just as a recap, last week, Ryan posted his attempt at 270 by 4. You can watch it in last week's Form Check Friday. We didn't get too much into the technique because it was just too heavy. There were some errors in there that he trains by himself. And so they probably started, 245, 250, and he doesn't have a coach. So he just kept putting weight on the bar. And what I saw was a set of 270 by 4 with the knees collapsing in and, 6 inches high and all kinds just what it looks like to squat too much weight. So the assignment was, let's figure out where you need to back up to, and let's figure out where this starts breaking down. So I had him do ascending sets of 5, starting at like 135, 185, 205, 225, 245. And we were just going to see this week where the technique starts to fall apart, and then we'll start rebuilding the squat there. Okay. So that's a little recap on what we're doing. Let's start with 185 and we'll just see how these look. All right. Okay. But you're certainly getting deeper. And your upper back looks pretty good. Bar position looks good. Stance looks pretty good. Toe angle might be a little too wide. We haven't talked about the big issue yet, but we will. Depth is great. Knees are coming in a little bit. Your toe angle might be your toes turned out a little too much. And that really makes it hard to keep the knees out. So I might just turn your toes in like an inch more on each side. And if I told you to do that last week, I still think, and the caveat here is that the camera can play all kinds of tricks on depth and angle and stuff like that. So I might have, the stance width is perfect. The angle might be too, turned out a little too much, but not bad. The depth is great. The missing piece here is hip drive, which we will get to, but what I want to do first is watch what happens at the heavier weights, and then we'll pick one that we're going to work with, and we'll just drill into that one. So this is, what is this, 225? All right, let's see. Yeah, I believe I had you narrow your stance last week. So, and I told you you'd get down easier. A little high. Let's see. Yeah, now you're starting to cut the depth off. The knees are caving in a little bit. Okay, so these are a little high, so we might pick 185 or maybe even 205, but let's see 245 just for fun. All right. I assume these are going to be even higher than 225. That's usually what happens. Eh. I think your depth, well, you can see the knees moving all around there. Okay, so it's not 245. And I don't think it's 225 yet. I think it'll be 225 real soon. But, well, we'll leave that up. Okay, so right off the bat, the main thing is you are fighting the urge to lean over, or you are fighting the requirement of leaning over, or the instruction of leaning over. Your urge is to actually try and keep your back angle too vertical. So I don't know what your history is. Maybe you used to do CrossFit or high bar squats a lot, something where, or you just have this vision in your head that the squat has a vertical back angle. It doesn't. Leaning over is the key here. That's why we put the bar in the low bar position. The further we move it down your back, the more it forces you to lean over to make your back angle more horizontal, right? In order to balance the bar over the middle of the foot. The higher the bar is on your neck, the more vertical your back angle. Okay, we want it in the low bar position because it forces you to lean over, because as you lean over, your hips stretch back. And if you stretch your hips back further, you stretch out more muscle mass in your adductors, your groin. Okay. And if we stretch out more muscle mass, we're using more muscle mass. And if we use more muscle mass, we can lift more weight. So that's why we want you to, the point of the low bar squat is that it produces a more horizontal back angle. That's a good thing. Okay. But people often will fight that urge because for whatever reason, they don't think they're supposed to lean over as much. They feel like they're leaning over too much, but they don't have any perspective on that. So you are trying to squat with a vertical back angle. If you notice, you're kind of bending. It's a lot of knee bend, and your back is still somewhat, and the heavier we get, this was one of the issues on with your 270 set, like the heavier we get, the more upright you want to stay, which defeats the purpose. You're going to shift all your weight into your knees that way, and you're really going to piss your knees off over time, because the knees in the squat, they're just along for the ride. The hips, all the action happens in the hips, so we want to get back into the hips and out of the knees. Okay, so let's find a rep here where, so you can see if you watch your knees, if we pay attention to, I'll try and zoom in here. If you watch your knees here, watch as you get to the bottom, how they move forward. See that? See you can even see some black under your heel. See how your heels are lifting up just a little bit? That's because the forward motion of the knees traveling that direction, right? Because is pulling you forward and picking up your heels just a little bit. Okay. So, we got to get you balanced. And part of that is leaning over. So setting the back angle, I'm trying to find a rep where I can see the correct back angle on the way up. Cause usually you'll assume the correct back angle on the way up. However, if you're shifting into your knees, you might not. You might lift your chest too soon. But let me see if I can find one. I mean, you're lifting your chest too soon there. So we're missing hip drive here. So we got not setting the back angle and then not using your hips to get up. A little bit better that way, but you could see you went up and forward. And you can see that black shadow kind of increasing as you get onto as you push up and forward. So we're going to fix this. Don't worry. All right, I guess that's as good as we're gonna get. So usually on the way up, we will see someone assume a more efficient back angle. All right, so let's say that that's the back angle. Okay, now it's probably actually going to be a little bit more horizontal, but if you had your weight balanced. So this is what we want here. Okay, I want you to set that back angle by the time, I mean, basically right away on the descent, but definitely by the time you're halfway down. Okay, you need to be as leaned over as you're going to be on the way up by the halfway point of the descent. So I'll show you where I want you set by. Like there. Okay, so notice, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but you're more upright than you were when I paused it on the way up. Okay, because again, you're trying to hold on to this vertical back angle. So if the back angle on the way down was like here, or sorry, on the way up was like here, you're right here at the halfway point. Okay, so this is a long way of explaining that you need to lean over more faster. Okay, and so we're gonna set your back angle and we're gonna look at your knees real quick. And we gotta set your knee position too. So by that halfway point, I mean, you're doing a pretty good job of shoving your knees out. Let's see an earlier rep. The problem is because it's all stemming from the lack of leaning over fast enough. You don't have a ton of knee slide. They move a little bit forward right at the bottom, but you're doing a pretty good job of shoving them forward and out. You just need to lean over more. Okay. So, and then once we get you more leaned over, you're going to drive a little bit more aggressive with the hip drive. Okay. So you can see one where you don't hip drive. I think it's the first one. If we watch your butt, I want to see that come up first. And I think the first one here, you just stand up, throw your shoulders back right away. Yeah. Very little motion with the hips there. So out of the bottom, once you get this depth is fantastic. Once you get here, and again, you'll be a little bit more leaned over, this point is going to lead you up first. Okay, you're going to drive your butt up first that way. And I don't know if it was you. Last time I had a whole bunch of people. We showed demos of hip drive. Let's watch another one. Let's see here. Yeah, this is the one we watched last week. This is one of our guys, but if you watch his hips, same thing, you pay attention to his butt and watch how it clearly starts the ascent. If you see that, you know that he's leading out of the bottom with his hips by driving his butt up. Okay. So that's what we want from you. I want clear hip drive. All right. So the fixes are, you're going to lean over more right away. Just dive for the floor. What I tell my clients is try and stamp your chest, your nipples, try and touch them to the rubber mat. So as soon as you start the squat, you're going to try and stamp your torso, like your sternum or your nipples, whatever you want to think about, right down here between your toes on the mat. So in order to do that, you got to lean over, and then you got to push your thighs out of the way. So shove your knees out to make room to touch that point to the rubber mat. Okay. So I want you stamping your chest on the rubber right away. Okay. Now it's very important that the knees go forward and out and you lean over at the same time. Okay. It's not lean over and then shove your knees out, or shove your knees out and then lean over, because you'll end up doing this. If you want to end up balanced over the middle of the foot, you have to move the knees out and lean over at the exact same time. Okay. So remember that. You lean over. So the first half of the descent is knees forward and out. Okay. So leaning over and then knees forward and out. And the second half of the descent is hips back and down, right? Knees forward and out, hips back and down. Once we get to the halfway point, you're fully leaned over, your knees are out where they need to be. The second half of the descent, you're focused on hips back and down, reaching back with the hips. Maybe you think about shifting a little bit of the weight back to the heels, right? Because you have a tendency, as we can see, to get up onto your toes. So at the bottom, I want you thinking about back on the heels just a little bit, right? So leaning over, you might, at the beginning, shoving the knees forward and out, you might think toes. And then once you get to the halfway point of the descent, hips back and down, sit back on the heels, stretch your ass back, right? And the net change will be you're right over the middle. And then once you're balanced at the bottom, you're gonna drive your butt straight up, okay? You're gonna stay leaned over, right? So lean over right away on the way down and stay leaned over as long as you can on the way up. Lean over on the way down, stay leaned over on the way up, okay? You're setting that back angle by the halfway point of the descent, and you're holding on to that back angle until you get back to the halfway point of the ascent, right? That's the goal here. You set it, and it doesn't change until you cross that halfway point on the way up, okay? So what's gonna help you here are pause squats again. And we're gonna do, and actually both of these. So hornstrength.com/videos, pause squat, bounce pause squat, okay? The pause squat is where you just go down, pause for 3 seconds. So on YouTube, we've got the description here. This is all the instructions on what to do, but essentially you're gonna take the bar out of the rack and you're just gonna go down to the bottom and pause for 3 seconds. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And you're gonna ask yourself 3 questions. Is my weight balanced over the middle of my foot? Or am I on my toes or my heels, right? While you're sitting down there, you're thinking, okay, am I on my toes or am I on my heels or am I in the middle? All right. Are my knees out as hard as they could be, or could I push them out more? And is my upper back, chest up and tight, or did I let it collapse on the way down? Those are the 3 questions, okay? Basically, weight distribution on the foot, knee position, and upper back extension. If any of those things need to be corrected during those 3 seconds, you fix them. So if you realize, you know what, I am on my toes a little bit, you're gonna shift back, feel the balance, register what that feels like, and then you're gonna come up butt first, right? Hip drive, okay? If the knees could be pushed out a little more, push them out and register that feeling, and then, okay, that's what it feels like, then come back up. If you rounded your back, you're gonna extend your upper back, hold it. Okay, you know what, it did round. There's some range of motion there that I can get back. This is what it feels like, come back up, all right? And from that point on, while you're doing your set of pause squats, every rep after that, the goal is to go right to the tight, balanced bottom position without having to make any changes, right? So if on one rep you realize I'm on my toes, okay, you shift back onto your heels, this is it, I come back up. Now my goal is to go down to that position and not have to move. Just sit there for 3 seconds because I hit it, I'm exactly where I need to be, all right? So it's like a little game you play with yourself. Can I go right to balance without having to shift anything? And the point of this exercise is for you to feel the correct balanced bottom position, right? So if you do a rep and you realize, I had to shift back onto my heels at the bottom during that pause, then on the next rep you go, okay, I'm gonna try and stay back a little bit more so I end up balanced, so I don't have to shift. So those are pause squats. You're gonna do those with lightweight, empty bar, 95 pounds, maybe 135. You're gonna just get a feel for it. And then, because you also have the issue with the hip drive, you can try the bounce pause squat, which we just talked about, but you go down to the bottom, same thing, just in those 3 seconds, before you come up, you're gonna bounce your hips up and down like that. So you can feel the stretch reflex, feel the rhythm of the stretch reflex. Once you hit the balance, okay, now I need to feel the bounce, and you kind of catch that rebound, and then you come right back up, okay? And again, you lean over and you stay leaned over, okay? You stay leaned over as long as you can on the way up. So I want you to work on both of those exercises. And I want you to then take another whack at 185, leaning over earlier, reaching back, sitting back a little bit on, keeping your weight back at the bottom, and then staying leaned over on the way up, driving your low back, your hips up. If that looks good, which I think you can easily fix once you feel it, then try 205. And if that looks good, try going up to 225. Okay. So, and then same thing, post your heaviest set of pause squats that you do, or the ones that you think look the best. and then post your heaviest set of, once you're done with the pause squats. Again, you're not going to go very super heavy on those. Then you're going to, once you, hit maybe 135 is going to be the limit. Then you're going to move on to your normal squatting, and you're going to try and remember what that bottom position feels like. So then do the same thing and see how high you can get with that perfect form. Okay. And we don't care about the weight right now. I don't care if it's 185. I don't care if it's 115, 220. It doesn't matter. I want to see, we got to get you to understand the correct movement, and then we're going to be able to load you up and you're going to crush it. Okay. So this is already a huge improvement. We just have to fix these couple of these things and kind of reprogram your head a little bit. And then we'll be doing this as efficiently as possible. And then we're going to be crushing 405. Okay. So good work, man. We will keep going from here, and we'll keep working on it. And so far so good. We hopefully will see you next week. Okay. All right, let's move on. We got Drew. Drew. Okay. Let's see. I'm back after missing last week. Dude, wow. Okay, I'll let it go this time, but I expect you here every week. No. Okay, the guy who can't keep back extension on my squat coming up out of the hole. Yes, I checked out whether the floor is really level, and it is. Okay. I focused on slowing down my descent. I tried to overdo the driving the hips. Looks like there's still a slight weakening of the back extension, but I'm not sure. Here's 240 by 5 for reference. This is a starting point a few months back. This is great. I love it. Thank you for the reference post, because that's super useful. Okay, 240, Drew, upper back extension, level floor. Let's see. Good, man. It's a nice one. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's that's pretty good. I don't have a lot to say. I do have one thing to say, but I want to look at the difference between that and the reference one, because I think I remember this. But let's just go back and we'll take a little trip down memory lane here. Yeah, I remember this. Head kicks back. Right, bar rolls up on the shoulders, upper back loses extension, head kicks back to prevent it from rolling off your neck. Yeah, knees cave in, the whole deal. Okay, so much better. And I think we're going to solve the mystery today, or we're going to put the final piece of the puzzle in play here. Because I think there's one more thing that's going to help you out. But let me watch one more time. I mean, it's kind of light for you, obviously, so you're throwing your chest up a little too soon, but much better there. You're leaning over more right away, which we just talked about in the last guy's form check, setting the back angle early. Okay, that one, I think you had a little bit of knee slide on that one. Let me watch it again, because it looks like it pulled you forward. Yeah. Okay. Let me see the difference between that rep and the first rep before I give you my final analysis here. Okay, so two things. I'm going to slow this down for you, and I want you to pay attention to how late your knees are in this. So the first part of the descent of the squat is that you lean over you basically unlock your hips and knees at the same time. That's the goal. If this is your knee, sorry. Yeah. No. This is your hip and this is your knee, right? We want this, right? The knee's going to go forward and the hips are going to go back. That's when you unlock those joints. It does this, and that allows us to stay right over the middle. Okay, if you just unlock your hips, you're back here, and if you just unlock your knees, you pull forward. Both of those things are going to move the bar out of the balance position, which is the most efficient position. So both of those things need to go out at the same time, right? This is the scissor lift analogy from that YouTube video I made. Okay, we both together, hips unlock, knees go forward, hips go back at the same time. All right, now, knowing that, if we accept that premise, let's watch your hips and knees, okay? And let's see if they go unlock at the same time, or if one goes before the other. And spoiler alert, one goes before the other. All right, let's see here. Oops, why am I? Okay, I was zoomed in and then I got carried away. Okay, here we go. So let's see. I slowed it down for you. But see that? You see the delay there? So if we watch another one, your hips start going back and the knees don't even move. Right? I mean, there. It's all ass back until, you're a few inches down, and then the knees start coming forward. So you're going to be off balance this way, right? Or you're going to be finding your way to balance rather than just keeping that bar in a slot right over the middle of your foot the whole time. So let's go back and fix it, or we're going to talk about fixing it. Now there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. See that? You're starting by sticking your butt back and then and then shoving your knees forward. So you're going back and then forward instead of boom, and then just staying straight up and down. So the cue here that you can think about in your head is you're doing a really good job leaning over though. So I don't want you to, when you start thinking about the knees, I don't want you to forget that you also lean over, right? Because a lot of times when I cue people knees first, they stay upright and push their knees forward. And then when they eventually have to lean over, the knees pull back. Okay. So in order to keep them even and balanced, you have to lean over and shove your knees forward at the same time. Okay. So you're thinking about sitting back too much. I want you to think about knees first. Get the knees. Ideally, again, we want knees and hips unlocking at the same time. So you're leaning over, shoving the knees out together. It's just like boom, boom. Okay. It's not lean over and then have the knees come forward. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, the other thing is we've talked about this a couple times with other guys recently. Like I had two guys where this was an issue in recent episodes. And one of those things is that your weight is back on your heels too much at the start position. And it's hard to see it, but you've got all your weight. You've got too much weight on your heels before you start the movement. Okay. So if we think about, this is the foot and this is the balls of the feet and this is the heels. So we've got a pressure gradient along this surface and we want it to be even. Okay. That's the goal. If you have even pressure on the toes and the heels across the surface of the foot, it's even pressure, right? And you move your body in such a way in basically any of these lifts except the bench press, you move in such a way that pressure gradient doesn't change. All the way, you take that weight all the way down, all the way up, and it's still perfectly balanced. Oh, sorry, I thought my thing stopped recording, but it's just the little drawing tool. Okay, so it's perfectly balanced, right? All the way down, all the way up, the pressure doesn't change, right? Then you're doing the lift correctly. Because if any error happens with the squat, you're gonna shift to your toes or shift back to your heels. So if you can just focus on keeping that weight balanced the whole time, and so you're never on your toes, you're never on your heels, you can't tell. Like if I stopped you at any point during the rep and said, just froze time and said, where do you feel the weight on your foot, toes or heels? You'd say, I don't know. And if you don't know, it's both. Okay, that's what we want. If it's clearly toes or clearly heels, it's wrong. So that's the goal. Now you're starting with your weight a little bit back too much on your heels. And in one of our other videos, it was so obvious because the guy's shins were like that. Okay, now you're not as dramatic here. I mean, that's kind of what it looked like. But I can tell that you've got more pressure on the heel than you do on the balls of the feet before you start the rep, which means you're already starting in the wrong position. Your weight is just, so the knees are gonna have, so you're already starting with your weight back towards your heels. And then the first thing you're doing is unlocking your hips and sitting back. So even more weight is gonna shift to your heels, which means then when the knees catch up, you're going down and forward, the bar rolls up your neck because, you know, the momentum's carrying you forward, and then you lift your chest and the whole thing falls apart. So before you do this, like when you're in this position here and you're getting set up to do the next rep, the last thing I want you to do before you start the squat, once you get tight, you take your breath, you set your back in extension, is just check that weight on your foot and just rock, just move the pressure from the heels to the balls of the feet just a little. Just a like subtle little shift in weight on the foot forward. It's gonna feel like, because you're not used to it, it's gonna feel like you've got too much weight on your toes, okay? Because what feels correct to you right now is actually too much weight on your heels. So when you get balanced, you're gonna feel like it's too forward, fine. And obviously practice this with your warm-up sets, lightweight and stuff like that. But in the deadlift, and I forget if we've coached your deadlift, but in the deadlift, once you set your back, right, the last thing you do before you pull is you just shift your weight back to your heels a little bit. Okay, so if we think it's even here, we want 60% of the weight back on the heels, and that will keep the bar from swinging off the legs when you deadlift. So right before you start the rep, you shift that weight back a little bit and then you go. I want that same principle to apply here on the squat. Right before you start unlocking, shoving knees forward and hips back, leaning over. You're gonna just shift to the toes a little bit, okay? And then start. And then you will be starting in balance, right? And then your job is just to keep that bar, that pressure even the whole time, okay? So try that, those two things, right? You gotta get the knees to unlock at the same time the hips unlock. You lean over, and those two joints go out at the same time. It's not hips back, then knees. It's knees and hips together, okay? And what will make that easier is to make sure that you're starting with your weight balance over the middle of the foot. So little shift in weight. It's gonna be like an inch of change in terms of like what we see when you do that. I'll barely be able to notice it because it's just a little bit of shift forward. Feel it, and then start the rep. Start the rep, leaning over, knees and hips at the same time. And then you've got a much better shot of ending up in that same balance position at the bottom, right? And then you just come up and everything should stay in place, okay? Other than that, these look really good, like really good. It's just these minor tweaks. It's like but they make a big difference, right? See, even there, you're going forward, and it's because you're starting back. So as soon as you start back and then the knees catch up later, by the time you get to the bottom, that momentum is still going forward. So you're going like this. And that's where the bar rolling and the spinal flexion comes in. It's all tied to this, okay? So that's your homework. Weight on the foot, knees and hips at the same time. Hit me with another video, man, and let's keep going. Don't you dare miss next week. No, whenever you feel like you got it, post another one and we'll dial it in, but we're real close here, man. So thank you, and let's keep going. All right, Neil, DrKudos, back in action. I'm back for a tune-up on my squat. Am I doing hip drive? It's hard for me to tell on heavy sets. Thanks. Edit, something weird is happening. Oh yeah, you had a weird link that I had to go in and fix. So I think this is it. Let's check check on Neil and see if he's doing hip drive. Neil, you should be able to identify if you're doing hip drive by now when you watch your videos. Nope. Oof, okay, Neil. It's been too long. No hip drive here, man. All right. I wish I could see one of your old, where we left you off, because I feel like we got you, you know, to a pretty good place. So, let's break this down a little bit. Stance looks, oh, you were the guy who could get his knees out like super hard. Okay, so again, are you doing hip drive? You should be able to identify this because we're looking at this and we're looking at this, right? This is our back angle and it should go 1, 2. This moves first and this follows along after, okay? This, this, this. Watch his butt. Tell me if you think he's doing hip drive. If we watch his hips, are they driving up? Right? You see a little pop here, and then the angle locks back in. He's not lifting his chest, but it's not even, right? It's not, the relationship between the hips and shoulders is not even the entire time. It starts with the hips first, and then it's even. After a couple inches, that back angle locks back in. But it's clearly his butt driving up first, and then he finds the correct, you know, back angle that he wants on the way up, and he just holds it, okay? So if we look at yours, your hips and shoulders are going to move. Your hips and shoulders are going to look like what he was doing 3 inches, 4 inches up after the back angle locked in, right? Then it's even from like the bottom, you know, quarter of the ascent, the first quarter, it's hips driving. Once you hit that point, second quarter, you know, halfway or whatever, now it's even, but you're just perfectly even the whole time. Right? So if we watch your butt here, there's no indication that you started that. In fact, that one, you actually lifted your chest a little bit. So you got to fix that. You got to fix your depth too. You need to get a little bit deeper, and you can see your back is going into flexion again. And see, okay, I'm remembering what we worked on with you. So part of this was setting the upper back in extension, right? Before you go down, big breath, chest up, right? Elbows in like that, shrugged up, okay? And then you hold this position and you lean over. Now, when you lean over, it doesn't require, I can lean over like this. Notice my elbows aren't lifting, okay? I'm not jacking the bar up on my shoulders like that. And because that's what, then if you do that, let me back up. The only way that you can do this rounding thing at the top, which you're doing, like if we watch your upper back here, watch your elbows, see how you do this. The only way that your elbows can move up that high is if you let this collapse, right? If I keep my chest up like this and I try and lift my elbows as high as they'll go, that's it. I can only do that, right? And if I've got the bar, maybe I'll get that. It's like an inch. If I want to jack them up higher, I have to let that extension go, right? That rounding. That's the only way you can do that. So this is the point, the thing that stops that from happening. You start letting that go, you're going to dump the bar over your neck. And then the whole thing is going to go to hell, and you're not going to be able to do hip drive because you're worried about dumping the bar over your neck. So you're going to lift your chest to save it. You're not even thinking about your hips. Okay, so that's really the thing that we got to go back to fixing, right? So when you take that breath, see there, you're good. we can see this nice, like the wrinkles in your shirt. Your elbows are down like this. Chest is up. Okay. But if we go a few seconds into the descent, look at that. You're already dumping so that the elbows came up, right? And you're losing that extension. So, I mean, it looks like the bar. So now, yeah. Let me see if I can help, like, give you a way to think about this. It looks to me like you're thinking, I've never said this before, so bear with me while I try and, this is one of the fun things about doing this, is I get to work on my coaching and find new cues and stuff. But it looks to me like the way you're imagining the descent in the squat is starting from here. It's almost like you're curling your body. Like you're thinking about like how the movement works almost like from the top down as you're like curling in on itself and then uncurling. Okay? If that makes sense. See, because that first part of like dump that, like you start the movement with elbows move up, like jack my elbows up, round my chest and curl in on myself and then do the rest of the movement. And it's not that at all. Okay? And so much of the issues that you're having, like this loss of upper back tightness right here, or this rounding of your spine, it's because you're dumping that bar up on your neck. And so let's see if we can give you a different way of like imagining like so let's see if I can find, see, and then as we get further into the set, you stop even setting your upper back, like really getting that. You're trying a little bit, but you just see it lift like very slightly. It's like a little twitch, you know, you're just kind of like, and then you go, what we want is, right? Every rep, tight, okay? And so this is what it's all stemming from, is this position right here. Okay, the elbows are way too high. They're like perpendicular with the bar here, like that. So let's talk about that framework idea, or that your mental model of how the squat works. So let me go back and find a rep where like you actually have that upper back tightness. There. Okay, so this is where I want you to start every rep. Every single rep should look like this before you initiate the descent, okay? Chest up, elbows down, right? This is great. So I want you to think about the fact that like from here to here, this segment, okay? The only thing that segment does is this, okay? It just hinges over, it just goes from vertical to horizontal, but nothing deforms, okay? The wrists don't bend forward or back. They just stay exactly. The head doesn't move. This is locked, okay? This is locked. This is locked up. The chest is up. The chest is up, right? Head is locked. And the whole thing is just this. You're just leaning over like that. Notice when I lean over, my elbows aren't moving, okay? That would be part of that segment deforming. This kind of curling in that you're doing on yourself is, the movement, again, happens here, okay? This is the pivot point, your hips, your waist. You're just leaning over. This, from your head to your hip, is just like rigid, solid steel. Nothing from this point to this point moves at all. You are locked in. That's it. And then it's like, imagine that your upper body was just like a piece of wood and I just knocked it over, right? I just pushed it like a domino and it just went like that. That's what you need to think of this segment here. This is just a big piece of wood, and we're going to knock it over like a domino at this. This is the fulcrum right here. Okay. And the movement happens from here down, right? This is where we're squatting. The hips and the knees. These are the things that are going forward and back. Okay. And the result of that is that the board, the piece of wood, will change how horizontal or vertical it is. Right? But it doesn't, nothing about, like, if this was just a sheet of plywood, if your upper body was just like a sheet of plywood and it just fell over, that's what I want you to do. You don't have any joints up here anymore, okay? You can't move your neck, you can't move your arms, you can't move your spine doesn't flex. It's all just a sheet of plywood that we're pushing over here. This can move, that's it, okay? Knees can go out and, forward and out. Hips can go back, but the piece of wood on top, it's just a domino, okay? That's what I want, because every error that we're having here, even depth, is stemming from this curling motion, right? This thing that you're doing with the upper body. So I think I've said this to you before, when I had you doing pause squats all the time. If I had you go down to the bottom and pause, right? I should see exactly this exact picture, just more leaned over. So when you're down at the bottom, if we put like 95 pounds on there and I told you to go down to the bottom and pause for 3 seconds, what I want to see is a screenshot copy paste of this picture, but instead of being vertical, it's going to be like this. But it's almost like I just took the picture and moved it. Okay. What we will see if we play that game and I say go down to the bottom and pause, I don't see that picture anymore. Right? And you sort of tightened up, but let's go there. Okay. Because as you get to the bottom, you kind of flare up again. But here that picture does not look the same as it does at the top. You've lost a lot there. You've given up a lot. There's been a lot of motion. The wood has deformed. The plywood has deformed, okay? That's the mental picture I want you to think about. None of this moves. You just set it and hold it, and you just hinge at the waist, okay? Same position at the top as at the bottom. From the waist up. Everything from the waist up is identical when you're standing up before you start and when you're at the bottom. And the whole rep, really. It's just a matter of degrees of how much that is, how vertical or horizontal you are. But that's it. Okay, so try the pause squats again, work on that, and then repost, and let's dial this back in. Okay, it's been too long, and we've got some form creep. Very good to see your squat again, but I'd rather work on this than like LTEs. Okay, this matters way more. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Oh God, I am going slow today. All right, we've got 3 more, so we're already in an hour. I gotta get moving here. Okay. Hello, Paul. This is my squat from the last training, 90 kilos by 5. I still have a lot of work ahead of me, although I feel a little better. Greeting from FitMax Bydgoszcz. Is that how you say that? Bydgoszcz? Something like that? My Polish is not very good. All right. Bydgoszcz. Something like that. Okay, you'll correct me. All right, let's take a look. I think we had you last week. I gave you some pointers. See if we can clean this up quickly. Okay. What? You got a weird little shift happening here. You see that? Like you get halfway down and your weight shifts back a lot. That's very strange. I don't think I've ever seen a shift quite as pronounced as that. Interesting. That one's probably the best one. This is yeah, it's kind of a, I mean, hopefully you can see this, what I'm talking about, where what I'm looking for is this thing to move and your weight to just stay even the whole time. That bar's like in a slot up and down, and the knees are going to go forward and out, and the hips are going to go back and down. Okay. And the end result is that this bar just stays locked over the middle of the foot. But you have this, I want to see where it breaks down here. So you're leaning over and you're sitting, you're getting the knees, and then you shift back a little bit here, but this is the one where, see, right about that point, your knees are tracking forward and it looks good, and then you start to shift all your weight back to your heels. Like it looks like you're going to fall over. Okay. Yeah. So you're going down and then back. All right. So this is a balance problem. Oof. So let's look at the first rep, and I'm going to mark your knee here, because this was the best one. Okay. So even though your knee's caving in a little bit, you got to shove that out. So right here, this has to come out harder. Just jack your knee out real hard. But we need to talk about, so where is this relative to your toe? Like, I mean, this is not a good line. So if we mark the front of your knee straight down, it's like, I don't know, 2 inches maybe in front of your toe. All right. So this is the closest I've seen of you balanced, unless you posted the last one. Oops. Nope. Okay. So we need your knee to get there by the halfway point. But I think what's happening here is you're setting, like right there, the knee looks good. The problem is you're not going to leave it there. See that? You pull. Now when you do that weird little shift thing, let's back up a little bit. Yeah, now look at your knee. Now your knee is like, so that gap is gone. Okay? Do you see the difference? In the squat that looked the best of the set, the first one, your knee was in line about here. And now in this bottom position, you're like right over your toe. So you got half of it right. Okay. You're doing a better job of getting your knees forward and out. So on the way down, knees go forward and out, right? And then, but you have to keep it there. You can't. So that's where the knee. Yeah. So now we got the knee where it needs to be. So this is good right here. The problem is you have to leave your knee there while you sit back into the bottom. So first half of the descent, knees forward and out. Second half of the descent, hips back and down. But the knee doesn't move back, okay? Because imagine if from this point here, just imagine that I'm pulling back on a rubber band or trying to shoot a bow and arrow, right? And my hand is your knee, okay? So I'm holding the rubber band or the bow and arrow, right? And then my other hand that's going to pull back on the bow and arrow, like it's going to, pull on the bowstring, is your hip right here, okay? So this is one hand, this is the other hand, and, we've got our bowstring, and I'm trying to pull back on it, right? I've got to leave my hand. I'm going to do it this way so it doesn't look as weird. But I have to lock my hand here. Then I have something to pull back off of, right? So if you shoot a bow and arrow, you take the bow in one hand and you lock your hand out, right? So that you can pull back off of that rigid arm, right, is holding that in place so that you can create that stretch. And that's the same thing that's happening here. Your knee is the hand that should be fixed forward, the rubber bands are in here, your groin muscles, your adductors, and the hip going back is what's pulling on this bowstring. Okay, if you can follow my analogy here. So that knee has to stay there so that as the hips stretch back, you can actually stretch out those rubber bands and generate that stretch reflex. But if I was shooting a bow and arrow like this, and as I started to pull back, I just went like this, right? I just pulled the other hand back. I can't stretch it out, okay? So as you go down to the bottom here, if this knee, once you fixed it in place, which you did perfectly, if you allow it to travel, your weight to shift back this way and pull the knee back, right? Then not only are you not going to end up balanced at the bottom, but you're not going to get a good stretch reflex because you didn't stretch anything. You moved both points, right? If we're pulling on a rubber band and I hold it and then pull back, I can stretch it. If I move both my hands back, it's not actually stretching, if that makes any sense. Okay, so you gotta set the knees like that and then keep them forward. Okay, and the way that you can fix this is, and I think I told you to do pause squats and stuff like that, but if you were doing pause squats and you paused in that position, and one of the three questions is my weight balanced on the middle of my foot or am I on my toes or my heels? You would 100% be on your heels right here. Okay, so if I didn't mention last week pause squats, I want you to work on those. Go to hornstrength.com/videos, pause squats, read the instructions in the YouTube description. Okay, they're all down here. That's the bounce pause squat, but they're all down here and it tells you what to do. And I want you to practice those. You can even post a video of you doing pause squats when you think they're good, but you're going to go down to the bottom, pause for 3 seconds, and then ask yourself, is my weight balanced over the middle of my foot or am I on my toes or my heels? Are my knees as shoved out as they could be? And is my upper back locked and tight or did it round? And if you feel like you're on your heels when you're paused down there for 3 seconds, you're going to shift forward onto your toes, feel that right? Feel the correction. Register it, this is correct, and then come back up, okay? So that's the value of that exercise, is it will make it very clear that your weight is not even across the surface of your foot, right? We've got your toes and your heels, and we want this pressure even. I don't want more back here, and I don't want more up here. If you feel that, it's wrong. If that pressure gradient ever changes, toes or heels, right? You got more weight on your toes, more weight on your heels, it's wrong. If you balance it perfectly so the pressure's even here from the top of the rep all the way down and all the way back up, that pressure stays the same, right? It never changes, then you're doing the lift correctly. And if you feel it change, you got a problem. So the problem here is you're doing a great job in the beginning setting your knee position over the toes, and then you're shifting your weight back, you're sitting back and pulling the knee back onto the heels. So just fix the balance on your foot. Practice pause squats with lightweight and then with like moderate, whatever you can get away with, but not too heavy, and learn what it feels like, what you have to do to create a balanced bottom position that's tight, where the weight is evenly distributed across your foot, and register what that feels like. And then every time you squat after that, make it feel like that. When you land in the bottom, you shouldn't be able to tell whether you're on your toes or your heels because it's even. Okay? So overall, that's the big thing you got to fix. The knees have to come out, but you've got to shove your knee to where you're shoving it out and then leave it there and sit back. But if you just focus on keeping the weight even on the foot and not sitting back on, not having it shift to the heels, you'll fix that problem easily. I mean, not easily, but it's fixable. Okay? So work on that. And when you think, again, do the pause squats and then let that carry over. And then when you feel like you got a set that looks like solid, where it's balanced, where I don't see that shift back, post it up and I'll take another look and we'll keep going. All right, that's your homework. Thank you for posting again. Good all the way from Poland. And sorry if I butchered the name of your gym, but do those, work on the pause squats, like, every time you lift as your warm up. And then maybe, I don't know what your program is, but if you have a light day, you can swap your light day for pause squats. Okay. And just learn the balanced bottom position. Learn to feel what it feels like when you are at the bottom and the weight is evenly distributed. And then that will carry over into your sets. Okay. Into your regular squat sets. All right. We got to move on. Anu, my man, back in action. My squat technique has gotten worse, or I've lost strength along with weight. Oh, failed on the 5th rep at 145 kilos. The bar starts moving forward towards the neck after a rep. My back gets round. I lift my chest, not able to correct it. Please provide some cues. Here's my link. Okay, man. All right, dude, you're being a little dramatic. Like, this is not that bad. I was expecting way worse. Okay, yeah. Well, if you know you're doing this stuff, don't do it. Like, oof, dude, you're gonna get hurt this way. So let's talk about cues to fix this. Yikes. Okay. Anu, my man. Here are the problems. You are starting, and I covered this in one of the form checks earlier in this episode. Same deal. Okay. You're not getting your knees far enough forward at the bottom. So you're starting, you can see this angle here of your tibia, right? So I can tell right now you got more weight on your heels, right? Okay, right from the get-go, you got too much weight back here. So you need to even this out. So you just need to, from this position, shift a little bit more weight on your toes. And then you'll be starting from balance. Because if you're already back on your heels, you're gonna have a hard time getting your knees far enough forward to keep you balanced over the middle of the foot. You're just gonna end up back too far. Okay, this is a common problem that I'm seeing a lot these days. All right, so now your knee is like, it's like behind your toe, right? So now when you drive up, you're gonna dump it. You're gonna drop your chest. See that? Shift back, and then lift your chest. So this is all sitting back too much. Look at your knee now. So when you squat, you're focused on, sitting back, but you're not focused on the other part of that, which is counterbalancing that by shoving your knee forward, okay? So it's not just hips go back and knees just stay here. It's knees go forward and hips go back, and then you're balanced, right? You know the video that I'm always talking about, let's get to the bottom of your squat. Let's see, where is it? What should the knees and hips be doing in the squat, right? This one, so we talk about scissor lifts, right? And the knees going forward and back. So that's a scissor lift, okay? So watch that video again, because this is just, everything's going to fall apart. All of the other problems that you're having, right, with the lifting the chest and flexing the back, it's all stemming from the fact that you don't have your weight balanced when you start. Okay, so you're back on your heels already at the start, and then all you're doing is sitting back, so it goes back even further. And now you're trying to keep that bar over the middle of the foot without falling over, which means you're leaning over too much, and the bar rolls up on your neck, and then you lift your chin, and then you lift your chest, and it's all of this is stemming from you not getting your knee far enough forward. Okay, so again, it's not just sit back, it's knees go forward, hips go back at the same time. That weight stays balanced over the middle of your foot. So get your knees forward first. Get your knees further forward faster, right? By the halfway point. And then, right? And then you can sit back and you will be balanced. And then you've got a good shot at coming up correctly. So go back if you want more, like go back and watch the earlier form check. One of the guys in here had like the same issue with starting with his weight too far back. And so check that one out because I cover a lot of the same stuff. But watch that. But this is all a problem of your knees not being far enough forward when you start. Okay. Yeah. It's just you're back too much. So you just got to do what is necessary, which probably means leaning over a little more to get this knee, like my guess would be right about here. Okay. So by the time you're here, this knee needs to be here. You're probably going to be a little bit more leaned over. And then the second half of the descent, you're going to focus on sitting back and stretching back into the bottom. But the first half is lean over and shove your knees forward and out. Knees forward and out. And then from the halfway point down, it's hips back and down. Knees forward and out, hips back and down. Those are the two parts of the descent. So fix that and then post another video, lighter weight. You're going to need lighter weight next time. Okay. But all the other stuff that you're frustrated with, which like I get, it's all related to that. So we're going to tackle that and then we're going to take another look at it. So don't be a stranger, back off, to a weight that you think looks good and let me see it. And let me see the balance. Okay. And go back and try pause squats just to remind yourself what the balance position feels like. Because if you paused any of those reps, you would not, and counted to 3 at the bottom. And I said, where's the weight on your foot? You would not say it's balanced. It would be back on your heels. Okay. So practice pause squats as warm-ups and remind yourself what it feels like to be balanced at the bottom. Okay. All right, man. Check back in. All right, Dick, here we go. Last guy. Oh, Dick's always the last guy. Hey, Paul, I'm back for more deadlift advice. Here's a triple at 200 kilos. This was my heavy workout, so at the limit for my strength, trying to balance form breakdown while making progress. I get it. I've left all the footage of my setup, so apologies. That means I don't actually lift the weight till 30 seconds in. Previously stuck at 192 kilos, aiming for 5. Any advice about adding weight to the bar? Should I try triples for a while, then aim for 5 at a lower weight? Stick to triples for now. Okay, let's see. All right. I may have you post a programming question to Reddit so I can tackle it and ask you some more questions. But also because it's like 1 hour and 20 right now and I'm losing steam. Oh yeah, we got the whole setup here. Okay. Jesus, 30 seconds in? Okay. Yo, you're getting fired up. Oh, hey, all right. All right, man. Okay. All right. Yeah, that one got away from you. Are those lifting shoes or like work boots? Oh, there's that rock forward. Okay, good. All right, man. Let me just check your questions real quick. Triple, heavy, let's see my strength. Been stuck at 192 for months. Oh, so you were stuck at that, and so you went to triples to bump the weight. That's cool. Like sometimes if you're stuck with 5s and you've tried playing with different back offsets, I'll tell you what, let's put your programming question in a thread on Reddit separately. And then I can ask you more about like what you've been doing. Have you been doing a light day? Have you been doing back offsets? Like I can't really ask you any questions right now. So let's do a programming one separately and let's just talk about technique here. All right, we got to wait the whole 30 seconds. That's a pretty good pull, man. I don't think there's a lot wrong with that. Let me watch it again. You were not we were working with you before on this whole like weird setup thing where you shift all your weight. You know, you had this little tick where you're pushing your butt way up and then coming back, but that first rep looked pretty clean. That one wasn't, because I think your weight was forward. See? Yeah. So the difference between these two reps is the first one, you're methodical with your setup. You don't do that old habit where you would rock forward and then rock back and pull. You actually just find the correct position, find the balance, and then you just like you set your back, your hips moved a little bit back, but not much. But after this rep, you're going to go back to a little bit of your old habit where you had that momentum. See how you're jacking your hips real high? Your hips are higher right now. Your weight's forward. And then you start, and then you basically rock into the correct balance position and start pulling at the same time. And that's going to cause the bar to swing away from you. Okay? So the solution here is do it like the first rep. Find your balance, perfect balance, right? And see, you're leaning forward. See that? There it is again. Now you're good. And so you could see, okay. So second rep, it swung away. Third rep, you did it again, but you kind of paused a little bit before you started pulling. So you notice there's a little beat here in between this rocking back. And so it's like rock back, pause, and then you push, right? And so it wanted to drift away, but because you stopped the momentum, it couldn't swing off your legs, versus the second rep where I don't think you pause. I think you start pulling as you're still rocking back. It was, if you, yeah, is this, okay, wait, this is, I'm losing track of the reps. Yeah, there was a little one there, but you're not like fully finished setting. Yeah. So you're actually, it's hard to tell, but you're actually starting the pull while you're still moving and still trying to set your back. All right. So we got to wrap it up. Here's the deal. Your first rep was great. So like, notice you're not forward at all. You're just balanced here. You're not doing any of that stuff where you're kicking your legs up and down, but your weight isn't on your toes. Your weight's where it needs to be. And then you set your back. Eventually you set it and you go, right? And it pretty much stays on your legs. The other ones, you shift to your toes, and then your weight moves forward, and then you have to find the position. You have to rock back to the right position and set your back and pull it. And rather than just being balanced, staying balanced and just setting your back and going. Okay? So do it the first way. Every rep, find the balance on your foot first. Okay? Just make sure your weight is a little bit back on your heels and you're where you want to be. That's step one. Okay. Weight on the foot. Step two, take a breath, squeeze your chest up, pause, push. Okay. Breathe, squeeze, pause, push. But don't start that process of breathe, squeeze, pause, push until your weight is where you want it when you're going to pick the bar up off the ground. So if your weight's on your toes, that's not where you want to pick the bar up off the ground. It's not going to come up that way. Okay, so don't do any of the breathe, squeeze, pause, push thing, any of it there. Get back, get to balance. Okay, this is where I want to be. And then initiate that launch sequence. Breathe, squeeze, pause, push. Okay, and then you're good. These are great, man. I mean, that first one was really nice. And post up your question about programming. I'm going to probably get to it this weekend if you get this, and then we can dive into that. I can ask you some questions. Thanks. Good to see you again. And great work. So Everybody, great work. Thank you guys all for posting an hour, almost an hour and a half. This might be a record. I'm glad I didn't do any intro here. Awesome. Thank you, as always, for being a part of this and for posting and reposting and working on it and taking my advice or not taking my advice and supporting each other, commenting, just watching, whatever. And we will do this again next week. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you on Reddit or YouTube or wherever. Thanks, guys.